everyone. This is your Texas bilingual realtor, Elizabeth Miranda. Welcome to Casa Y Vida. Each week, we interview local community leaders, business people, entrepreneurs, artists, and just everyday people from the great state of Texas. We love sharing information about our city, our beautiful state, and of course, our Latino culture. And now, let's listen to this week's podcast. Welcome to Casa Y Vida. I am Liz Miranda, your host.
And I'm Laura Ramirez, your co-host. And we are joined today in our studio with our special guest, Dr. Rosalinda Mercado. She is the CEO of eColors in Education. Welcome to our show.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad that I had this opportunity to be here with you today. So thank you for the invitation.
Definitely. We are just really glad that you're here today.
Yes, and it's my first time meeting you. And as I was just telling you a little bit right before we started, you are incredibly young. I mean, like PhD, doctor. I mean, how can this be?
Well,
good genetics, maybe.
No, I think that there's several pieces that are involved. That sometimes when you see someone on the outside, you really don't know what's motivated and what's kind of given them that fire to get things going. And for me, it started at a really young age. I was 17 at the time, back in 1990, when I decided to place myself in a children's home. And so that trajectory kind of guided what decisions I made thereafter.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. So you went... So based on that, then you later went on to school and obviously, right. Bachelor's, master's,
and,
PhD.
Yeah, my doctorate.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, we're going to want to hear a little bit more about your story. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you an icebreaker.
Sure.
We do this with our
Let
guests.
her do it to herself. Let her pick her own question.
Oh, really?
That way you have no one to blame but yourself.
Yes.
Well, there's no fault. It's just a question, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll do the honor of asking you the question. And just so you'll know, our rule is you're allowed to pass once, and after that you do have to answer. So hopefully,
but nobody passes.
Exactly, not yet. So the question that you chose for yourself was, what was your first record, tape, or CD that you ever owned?
Jeez, it wouldn't be tape. Couldn't afford it back then. But I did know of tapes. It would have been a CD at college, Boys to Men.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what was your favorite song from the Boys to Men CD?
Okay. No, I only know jingles now at this point because I haven't heard it.
Well, you can sing it.
No,
Go ahead.
I only do the karaoke version. So I had a little Boys to Men, I do that with you. But I'd like, when they first got together, they had a really nice album. And that was like my freshman, sophomore year of college. And that was my CD of choice. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty neat.
Was it End of the Road by
Yes.
chance? Okay, I just had to put that out there. So I just wanted for you to date yourself because she just mentioned that you were young.
Yeah.
And
I'm a little older than probably what I look.
You definitely must be because you definitely look very young. You look like you can still be in college.
She exercises a lot. That's the secret.
Yeah, I can see you also exercise a lot. So tell us about your, you are currently the CEO of, what's it called?
eColors in Education.
eColors in Education. And what led you to where you're at right now?
Well, so first of all, my background is in education. For 17 years, I was an educator all the way from teacher to assistant principal to superintendent. And the work that I had done in those 17 years was impacted in my last assignment where I was working at a high school, actually not but a mile from this studio. And when I was working in that particular high school, a business partnership came in, and that business partnership started with Chevron and Equilibria. And what happened was they wanted me as the campus principal at the time to consider offering essential skills to students, what we would have formerly called as soft skills. And these are the skills that they would need to be either college or workforce ready. We took that work on for 4 years as partnership. Students' lives were changed, and consequently, by the fourth year, it was now my turn to establish eColors in Education, which didn't exist before, and it's the nonprofit arm of Equilibria. Oh, okay. And so for the last 6 years, I've been doing that work across the U.S.
Awesome. Yeah, I hesitated with the names. I'm like, I know I saw Equilibria, and then
Yes.
I saw E-Colors. I'm like, okay, are they the same or are they different?
Right. So the company is different because obviously Equilibria is our for-profit. They work with oil and gas industry, and our nonprofit works in the educational arena, nonprofit organizations, and with government entities.
I see. And so tell me, what kind of services do you guys provide?
Well, the majority of the services that we provide are in the professional development series. So we offer leadership retreats. We offer training for school boards. We also train the youngest of students starting at age 7 and provide them with training to understand themselves and also have an awareness of some self-regulation. What can they do behaviorally to manage themselves, particularly in the school environment? So it ranges from students to parents to teachers to the highest level of leader in an educational environment.
Okay, so do you work primarily in schools?
Primarily in schools, but also we work with universities as well. And even your neighbor here, the Houston Zoo, they're a nonprofit organization, so we work with them also.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're going to want to hear more about some of the things that you do with colors.
Yes.
Specifically with colors.
Yes.
And but we're going to take a little break right now to thank our sponsors, and we'll come right back to that question.
Getting approved for a home loan is the first step when buying a home. To submit your loan application, call Susie Kondolopoulos with Gateway Mortgage Group at 281-250-2696. Susie is bilingual in English and Spanish. Again, that is Susie Kondolopoulos with Gateway Mortgage Group at 281-250-2696.
So we are back to our show. We are here with Dr. Rosalinda Mercado. She is the CEO of eColors in Education, and we were just starting to talk a little bit about eColors and the partnerships that you have with some of the educational entities and nonprofit organizations. And tell us a little bit about your work and how you get to travel a lot.
It's not as sexy as it sounds.
It does
sound. There is a lot involved in work. What we call onboard. You have to get yourself there. Then you train, and we train either in half day or full day segments, anywhere from 10 people to 150 people in the audience. And then after you conduct the session, then I return back to my home base. But that is repeated every week, and it depends on who is needed. This is our busiest season. It's back to school. It's so everyone has these professional development series that they request, and we happen to cover the 8 essentials. So remember earlier I had said to you that when Equilibria and Chevron came to my school, they wanted me to incorporate some essential skills for students. So one of the things, and one of the most important thing is self and team awareness. So how well do you know yourself, and how well do you know yourself around others? And if you didn't have that awareness, it was not likely that you were going to be an ideal team member. And so once we figured that out, then we could move to the rest of the essentials. So the other one is shared vision and values. Even as I'm talking to you about this from a professional perspective, you could still, Liz, look at your personal life and say, what are your core values? What do you stand for today that you now realize? And so people started recognizing that those core values tend to bleed in with the work that they did as well. The third essential, if you will, is clarity of roles and process. So, Laura, if you've ever worked in an entity where someone threw their hands in the air and said, it's not in my job description, when they do that, it is likely that the role either wasn't clear or the process wasn't understood. And so they don't get any fault. They throw their hands in the air. But why they do that is what we're trying to find out so that we can be clear. Those 3 components are the driving elements to resulting conditions. So when you say that you want to build trust in an organization or within the team that you're working with, did you have an awareness of yourself and your team? Did you have shared visions and values? And did you have clear roles and process? If you didn't, then it's unlikely that you will have trust, or at least the trust that you're looking for to have that momentum to keep you going. And so we continue to further dig into things like that are modules that would impact an organization. But that kind of implementation takes a 3 to 5 year commitment from every organization.
So when you were talking about the know yourself first, it's foundational, correct?
It
so
is.
You'd have to, in order to be, I guess, to have this effectively work on a team or in an organization, you would have to do some internal work first.
Right. The idea here is that in order for someone or a team to grow, they have to be willing participants. Okay. If they're not, then the very foundation you're working from is broken. So what you want to do is be able to take people where they are, even if they may feel broken, but have an awareness of that. Now, where do we go from here? If you're looking at people that don't want to move forward, then that's where the difficulty lies in some of the organizations that have found that they've called us to come assist, because they're trying to figure out what that is to move people forward.
Oh, okay. So they find themselves often like in a stagnant
yes.
Form of operation, and they want to be able to fix it at the surface level or as much as you can. To be able to
and with that, you take the personality diversity indicator to discover your e-colors, or what we call the PDI. And when you take that, Liz, you took it.
Yes.
And you found out your e-colors were
red and yellow and red.
So we would say that your e-colors are predominantly yellow over red. But as you said, you had a reflection or a percentage of each of the other e-colors. So the yellow is a socializer. They like to get things done in a way by conversation. And one of the things that can get dismissed with the yellow is that people think, oh, they just like to talk. The reality is that's how they connect. And they connect with people through storying, through conversation, but it does require time. The red part would be the doer. And I believe that's your top.
That's my primary color.
E-color. And the doer likes to get things done, brief and to the point. But the yellow-red combined, just as you have in your e-colors, is big picture oriented and fast-paced. Go, 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 move, move,
That's
move.
me. That's me. I'm like, okay, what's the bottom line?
Right. But what you have to consider is the way that we frame the e-colors is then the other two e-colors, the blue and the green, would be opposite of that. The blue is the relator. They empathize and listen really well to other people. And the green is the thinker, where they process and like lists and order and organization. But the blue, green, blue combined are steady paced. And they need more information. So they may ask you questions, but they're not asking you questions to question you. They're asking questions so that they can get clarification. And that can be misconstrued by someone who's ready to go and move on with a task. And they're still waiting back here, not moving, because they don't have enough information to know what next step to take.
And that's funny you said that, because as you mentioned before, my primary color is red. So I'm primarily a red-yellow. Mm-hmm. So I'm a doer socializer. And you just mentioned that the other two colors were blue and green.
Yeah.
I also had my husband Tony take the test, and he's blue-green.
Really?
Wow.
So it works kind of in his favor, but not in his favor, because at times I think we have a difficult time communicating, because he does tend to think about something and process it where I just want an answer right away.
Right. But at the same time, the way that you even described it, you saw that as a problem. He doesn't see his thinking as a problem.
Right.
And I was gonna say,
yeah, he's probably listening to this day. She's right. She's exactly right.
and I was gonna say that I think that one of the benefits here, or what the outcome should be, that you're trying to understand the other person based if you know what they are. They're not trying to be difficult. They're not trying to be question you. That's just who they are.
Exactly.
And I think it's very similar to the DISC profile, right? Because we use the DISC a lot now when hiring people, right? And so it also is very similar. And now that I'm more familiar with that, I wasn't familiar with
e-colors.
With e-colors, but I'm familiar with the DISC. And so when I hire people, I say I want you to do the disc, and that kind of tells me also their
like if they're going to be good on your team, like if they're going to be a good team member,
and then also understand I have to keep that in mind, that this is what they're good for, and they should be good for that position, and the same thing here, right? But I always remember one time, it was years ago, that I had one supervisor. I was like so mad. I was the manager of the office, and I was so mad at some employee, and one day, and I was like, they're fired. And then, this is like the owner, right? The owner's like,
that's the red.
It's like, why? Like, he goes like, the thing is that not everybody's like you.
Right.
Not everyone's like you. And he didn't see the and I'm like, it kind of like, it hit me. And I'm like, you know what? He's right. I mean, he's the owner of the company and he's okay with it, but I'm not, because I'm just like, no, I expected everyone at that time to be like me,
right,
and to be as a go-getter like me. And if you weren't a go-getter, you were like, didn't care, you were slow. And so it actually, made me realize that. Right. And so now when I keep it in mind when I see something like a disc test, or this is the same type of thing, that you have to understand that person, where they're coming from.
So I want to offer a couple of things to you. First of all, we have this notion called e-colors ethics. So for anyone that's listening and or anyone that may be watching, as you are hearing the description of these colors, it is not sufficient enough for you to go home and say, you're looking a little red, honey. I'm not sure if I'm liking you today. We can't do that. Right. Because what you want to do is, one, offer the person the opportunity to discover who they are themselves before we place that idea of who we think they are on them. Right. Secondly, you mentioned this as a hiring practice. Our vision of realizing potential means that I will take you from wherever you are to whatever next level you need to be. So when I hire you, we don't use this as a tool on the hiring, but on the other end, once you've been hired, so that I can better understand you, then you'll participate and utilize the tool so that I know, as you said earlier, Liz, how do I need to communicate with him or her? Because maybe my approach isn't the best approach for that individual. So that's how we utilize the PDI. We don't want it to be something where we say, you absolutely can't do this job. And the reason I say this is, even though your natural tendency, Liz, is to move really quickly, switch dresses, go from one scene to the next, you are organized. And you can relate to others. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the roles that you're in right now. It's just not your natural tendency. And
exactly.
Who am I to limit you and say, no, you can't work with people in that way? So instead, we have you work with individuals in a way that would allow you to maximize your strengths, but also manage any what we call potential limiters that could get in the way. And don't use those potential limiters as an excuse for bad behavior, or that's just me and I can't grow in that area.
It's true. When I was doing the assessment yesterday, or, I was doing it online, and it gives you a choice of, are you this, are you more this, does this word more describe you, or does this one describe you the least, I guess? And once you pick the one that describes you the best first, and then that leaves three more, and you have to pick from those three which one, is least like you. And I'm like, I can't pick. I'm like, well, the ones that I was left with, picking, I'm like, I can't pick that one because it's like I'm organized. Yeah. I'm like, well, I didn't want to pick that, because I'm not, I didn't want to pick some of the things, but I'm like, well, I can't pick the other ones. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that it was making me realize, I'm like, okay, I'm not saying that I'm organized. I'm saying I'm unorganized, or I'm saying I'm not organized, or I don't have follow through, or I don't complete things. I felt at the point like I was saying that, but I'm like, well, but the thing is that I can't say that I am, because I'm not. I mean, right. I'm not one of these,
right.
that this is what I'm going to follow. No,
right.
I'm like, sometimes if that's not working, I'm going to switch it up.
Right.
And that's it. Well, and as far as tasks, I'm going to get it done the way I can get it done. Not always the way, somebody else would have done it.
It's not in the plan, but it's as creative as you can problem solve it.
Yes, yes. And so we're going to be taking a little break. That's what Laura's motioning. And it is time to take a little break. So we're going to take another little break to thank our sponsors. Hi, this is Elizabeth Miranda, your Texas bilingual realtor and broker owner of Miranda Properties. If you are looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, give me a call. 832-404-6462. I would love to be your realtor.
Thank you for joining us here on the show today. We are back with our special guest, Dr. Rosalinda Mercado. She is the CEO of eColors in Education, and we were talking about the personality indicators and their significance and their meaning. So could you just share a little bit more about that with us?
So if I could go back, there are 4 primary e-colors and possibly 12 different combinations of e-color personalities. When they are combined, as we described, for instance, the yellow, red, red, yellow, we also have this additional idea. When I mentioned to you self-regulation, the notion there is that because you know you're fast-paced, would you need to hit a play button or a pause button? What do you think, Liz?
I guess if I'm fast, I guess pause.
Yes, so you would pause on either a potential reaction that might take you further or overboard than what you wanted it to, and you would hit your play, but instead of hitting play to move, you'd hit your play to listen, right?
That makes
So
sense.
on the other end, where you had mentioned Tony, your husband, his e-colors were blue over green.
Right.
When you have his internal buttons of pause and play, because he doesn't move as quickly to say what he's actually thinking, then for him, it's hitting the play button so that Laura can hear out loud maybe what he has been sitting on for a while. And he hasn't said anything, so she has no idea that he was actually thinking that, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to see it. That is excellent.
Did you hear that, Tony?
Yes. Let me just redeem myself. He balances me out, so that's the best part.
No,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And quite frankly, you need each other. And so you would seek out somebody opposite of your e-colors, if you will, so that it can be a check and balance to say, did I think this through? Had I considered everything? And that person helps you, and those internal pause and play buttons practice your personal intervention. Because the only person that can intervene for you, that can either stop you from making the worst mistake that you could make, is you. So blaming somebody else, saying, oh, if someone would have only done, it wasn't them. You had to actually go back to you, but you have to know which internal buttons that you needed to hit in your brain for you to make that decision.
Yeah, I've always said that, well, not knowing this, but I've always said, like my daughter growing up, I always told her, you can't change another person. You can only change yourself.
Correct.
I've said that to her over and over. And I believe that, it's almost like, and I don't mean by, I've got to change to, so that they're not mad at me or whatever. I mean to change your way of thinking about them.
Right.
And again, I think life offers us in many scenarios different perspectives. So the e-colors, if you will, is at the surface. And if you look at an iceberg, what you see on the tip of the iceberg is just a little bit of a person. What's underneath, what made them who they are, how it is that they got to be where they're at today, you don't know that. And because we don't know that about people until we actually get to learn people, we won't know what's the best way to reach them. So to make judgment or say, this person really doesn't work well with me, I'd like that individual to ask him or herself, did I dig deep enough?
Right.
Right.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think people change colors at different stages of their lives?
I would say absolutely so. First of all, when I did this with my secondary students, the majority of them, about 67%, were what we would call blue, yellow, yellow, blue. So they like to socialize and they like to relate. So when they came to school, they were looking for meaningful relationships. Does the teacher care about me? Do they understand where I'm coming from? But as they grow up and experience careers or maybe even some setbacks, their e-colors will change just like their personality has changed because life has taught them different.
That's true. It's like I was telling you during our break, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I sort of have the same personality, but I don't. I can see a major difference that happened, and I always like, did something happen hormonally, or I don't know, or was it just my outlook, or maybe a combination of both. But I certainly am. Even though yes, I'm assertive, and I was more. But I was probably a lot more assertive and a lot more, just different. And now I'm well, of course, age also plays a lot with it, right? But certainly a different person than I was. To me, it's always pre-cancer, before cancer and after cancer.
Right. Again, when you look at the character piece of what's underneath the iceberg, anywhere from developmental age to life experiences can shift who you are as an individual.
Yes. So tell us about these, a couple of different, you said there's 12 different personality styles. Any others that maybe that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So then again, if you take the brain and you take the red, green, red combination, those individuals prefer to work on their own. They understand they have to work with others, but they've thought everything through that sometimes when they are looking at an assignment, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to pretend listen because I already know what the answer is going to be. Or I already know the direction I want to go. Not all of them do that, but because they have a keen skill for knowing what steps to take, and they have this notion that they want to do it right the first time around. The opposite of them, a yellow, blue, blue, yellow, who is just happy to be around people, may feel exhaustive to the other end of that personality. So they're more task-oriented, the red, green, reds, versus the yellow, blue, blue, yellows who are people-oriented because people matter first before they make a decision. And for a red, green, red, when they see a person, they will maybe look at them if they need them as a resource.
Very interesting.
Wow. That is very interesting.
Yes, very, very interesting. Well, we are going to take one final break to thank our sponsors, and then we're going to come back and close up the show.
Sounds great.
Getting approved for a home loan is the first step when buying a home. To submit your loan application, call Susie Kondolopoulos with Gateway Mortgage Group at 281-250-2696. Susie is bilingual in English and Spanish. Again, that is Susie Kondolopoulos with Gateway Mortgage Group at 281-250-2696.
We are back now with our special guest, Dr. Rosalinda Mercado. She is the CEO of eColors in Education. We've been having some great discussion on the different personalities of the 4 colors, the indicators. So before we wrap things up, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how could they go about doing that?
So there's a few ways. ecolorsineducation.org is our main website. In the website, I am the sole person. Although I am partnered with Equilibria, and I am the nonprofit arm of that organization. I'm the only one that runs our nonprofit organization. So when they go to our website, they will find my information directly there at ecolorsineducation.org. Now, eColors in Education is also on Facebook and Instagram as a page itself. But you can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Dr. Mercado Garza. I'm sorry, Dr. Mercado, PhD on Twitter. And then they would be able to access and find me through those venues.
Okay. And also on Instagram and Facebook, it's going to be eColors in Education.
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. That way we can get a hold of you and drag you out of your hermit hole.
Yes.
All right. And lastly, we want to ask you the 4 questions that we ask every guest on our show.
Okay.
To finish up. So our first question is,
Can I ask the first? Because I'm going to forget the other 2, so I'll just do the first one.
Go ahead.
That's what I get for not bringing my iPad with me. So the first question we like to ask all of our guests is, what was your first job? And is there any interesting story that you have with that?
I mean, like first legal job? Like I got
well,
paid.
Hey, if you want to go with illegal,
go ahead. Well, if you do something illegal, we want to know.
No, I'm saying like, I mean, I took care of kids.
Oh, okay. You mean like,
let's just say first official job.
First official
I'm
job.
sorry, yes, better word, official.
I worked at Luby's.
Wow, okay.
In my first official job. And
was this in the Valley?
This was in the Rio Grande Valley. And I then... but you have to take into consideration that I was born in Mexico. So when I finally had all of my paperwork to make me legal and a resident of the state of Texas at the time, I was literally of working age. So I was 16. So I was very, very eager to work because I knew that was a privilege that I now had. And so Luby's is where I started, but education mattered a lot to me, so I didn't let it interfere with during the school year, but that's what I did in the summer.
Oh, okay. What did you do at Luby's? Anything?
No,
Sir.
the lowest member of the totem pole. So I either vacuumed for you or served you a plate or served you on the line. It wasn't quite exciting.
So you were born in Mexico, but you grew up in Harlingen?
I did. I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley in Harlingen. Yeah.
Another Valley girl.
Yeah.
From the Valley. I'm from Laredo, Texas. So,
I'm sorry, Laredo is not the Valley, right? I'm just kidding.
No, it's not. No, I'm close to it. It's not the
We'll
Valley.
claim you. That's okay. You can be a Valley girl.
We're at the end. We're all border towns.
That's
kinda,
right.
so
That's true.
So it counts. All right. So question number 2 is, what advice would you give to someone that wants to have a career in education, the kind of career that you have?
I think first and foremost, you have to know that whatever work that you do, let's say in the work of education, you are working with other people's children. And because you are working with other people's children, this no longer is a calling about you. It is about what you're going to do to serve them. And if you continue to stay focused on, if you will, that vision and that value, then everything that you do, every decision that you make would be for the right reasons. Because in a business that is that of an education field, and it's impacting the lives of children, the adult will always have the power. So that's a lot of power that you have to be able to manage.
That's very true. And let me add something to that question, because you do have a PhD.
I do.
And not very many do. So I know that that's very difficult. I, got my bachelor's in psychology, and I considered going to get my master's. And I said, unless I get my PhD, I don't want to go further. And I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go, but this just seemed like just too much for me. It was just too hard. I didn't go past my bachelor's. So how did you do it?
I believe I shared with you at break that when I was 17, I had placed myself in a children's home. When I placed myself in that children's home, that changed the trajectory of where I was going. I am one of 13 children. I'm number 11. And I was the only one that went to live at that children's home. So my life looks nothing like my siblings' lives because, again, we both took different roads. When I went to the children's home, the only thing I told myself was, I have the brain and I have the capacity to do what I want. That's all I had. Everything else was beat up, if you will. But I said, no one can take away my brain. With that, that was symbolic to me in the educational aspect where I said, I will continue schooling and started my endeavor with my bachelor's. And when I finished my bachelor's, that was my first indication of what I had thought would happen if I earned my education, and it ended poverty for me. And when I realized how quickly of an impact my education had in changing my life, then I said to myself, I think I really want to continue doing this. But no one had educated or informed me of what the next steps were. I just saw what was around me and was different. So I started inquiring. So like you said, I looked and said, a master's? Well, what is that? And what's the responsibility? What does it entail? And by this time, I knew that I had the intellectual capacity. Did I have the fortitude and the perseverance to keep moving forward? Because when you get when you're working on higher educational degrees, a lot of it is how long can you persevere and keep pushing yourself, because you are doing that along with, for me, I was working full time as well. And so I went to Texas A&M to complete my master's. When I did that, it was to become a principal, and I finished my master's, and I learned at that point that I had leadership capacity, which I didn't know that I had either. So now I'm recognizing, not only am I learning the things I need to know to be a skilled educator, I am now learning things about me that I didn't know I had, innate abilities that people saw in me. And so I really appreciated hearing that kind of feedback, that I said, I want to continue again and do more. No, there was nobody telling me I couldn't. At this point, my parents had already given up their rights. They were no longer my parents. I was living my own life, and so far the decisions that I had made had shown indication that it was for the better. So when I went to work on my doctorate, it was an investment in me as much as the rest of my future that I would have. And I never knew what the status of what that doctorate would mean. That was never the goal. But as I was finishing up my doctorate, I was 4 years into it. My father had passed away. And so my father was one of my abusers and one of the reasons why I placed myself in the children's home. When he passed away, I went to the committee and I spoke to them directly, and I had indicated that I was no longer going to finish my degree. I didn't need to finish my doctorate because the very person I was trying to prove that I was going to have a better life was no longer here. And they then said, wow, your father must be so proud of you. And I said, oh, you're so sweet. You don't know my father. And they said, tell us more. So I go on and tell them, start off when I placed myself in the children's home and up to everything that I've shared with you now. And they decided, the wise committee that they were, that my life story of growing up in the Rio Grande Valley, in poverty and in abuse and neglect, that should be my research. So my dissertation became my life story. And it was entitled From Being Considered at Risk to Becoming Resilient. It's an autoethnography of abuse and poverty. So that's what I ended up doing my research on. And as I shared with you earlier, when you were asking me what advice I would give other people, particularly in education, I went into education knowing that everyone has a story. They just may not have the platform that I did to be able to tell their story, but at least I could be willing to listen. And if I was willing to listen, then maybe that would be part of the impact that would change the trajectory of that child's life. And so that's how the degrees came about. And so it's been 10 years. I finished my degree 10 years ago.
Wow. And I know that you also work with child abuse or
I do.
Child abuse prevention, right?
Yes. I don't abuse children.
I know. Child abuse prevention.
Yes.
But, and in fact, even going back to the same
children's home.
Children's home.
That's right. So I am still affiliated with the children's home. It is Sunny Glen Children's Home in San Benito, Texas. And that very children's home still exists today. I've been connected with them for the last 29 years since I placed myself there when I was 17. So just to do the math, I am currently 46 years old.
Oh my gosh, I never would have guessed that. Thank you for telling me, because I would have wondered forever. How did she do this?
But I am the sitting president of the board of directors at Sunny Glen Children's Home.
Oh, awesome.
And continue to offer guidance and support for the children that are continuing to be served by them.
Well, what a beautiful story. I mean, as far as your survival,
Yes.
your survival, your
The
success.
resilience.
Your
Yeah, the
resilience,
work on
absolutely.
resilience.
Yeah, and I did find your dissertation yesterday online, so you can be found, and it's 200 and some pages, right? So no, I didn't read it all, but yeah, definitely admire you. Definitely admire you and congratulate you on everything that you've become.
I appreciate it.
And I don't even know if I want to ask this last question because we already know your superpower, but I'm going to ask anyway. So we ask all of our guests, tell us what your superpower is. And if you can't identify it, what would you like for your superpower
she has a
to be?
superpower.
Yeah, she does. But I just thought I'd state it that way. So what's your superpower? We already know you're Superwoman. What's your superpower?
May I just add that growing up, I didn't know the skills that I had. And I didn't even know them as I was describing until I was in university to know I even had a skill set. And now having the ability to go back, I can still remember walking to the grocery store at age 4 and passing by the homeless people near my neighborhood and waving at them, super friendly, saying, hey, you need anything? I'm about to go to the store. A 4-year-old had no business, one, talking to strangers, and 2, running that errand. But that's the life that we were living, right? And as I found myself doing that, I really saw that I saw a stranger in no one, that anyone that I would come across had the ability to be given a common human decency and treatment. And so when I see people, I don't ever see them as less than. As matter of fact, They could probably teach me more than I already know right now. So I think that is one of the strengths that I found I had in knowing that no matter where you are in life, you can teach me something just as well as I can with you. It's just a matter of, are we willing to have that conversation together?
That is a very cool superpower. Yeah.
Absolutely is. So, well, we want to just, thank you for all this information and for being our guest.
Absolutely.
And I know that you're here on, I guess, on an assignment or business,
yes,
right?
yes,
So you're not even from, you don't live in Houston.
I do
so
not.
we definitely appreciate you taking the time to come
out,
to our show.
Absolutely.
And we appreciate it. And what can I say other than just thank you? We love
we
having
really
you.
enjoyed having you on the show. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Casa Y Vida. Please subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Casa Y Vida. If you would like to recommend guests or topics, please send an email to lizmirandatx@gmail.com. Gracias.